Ever wondered what sparked Jeff Kinley's passion for end times prophecy? Then join us as we sit down with Jeff to hear more to the story.
So Jeff, tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing right now and how you got interested in Bible prophecy as well.
Yeah, well, I was born and raised in South Carolina. I'm a Carolina boy, born into a great home, great parents, not a Christian home. So we, like everybody in the South, you go to church when you're 4 and 5 years old, but after that we pretty much dropped out and we became, part of the unchurched in the South. And my dad was from a family of 9 boys and 1 girl, and then my dad had 3 boys. My oldest brother had 3 boys. Now I have 3 boys. So
wow.
I joke and say that the sap in our family tree must be testosterone or something. A lot of boys in the crowd. But I just grew up kind of the all-American home. 2 older brothers, and we all played sports and excelled in sports and stuff. And I kind of caught the tail end of the hippie generation. So I followed one of my older brothers, grew my hair out really long, played the rock band, started traveling around, stuff like that, and just got into everything that goes with that, all the paraphernalia and the stuff that goes with being, in that generation.
Right.
And that got me into a lot of trouble. And, I never got arrested, but almost died several times. So,
wow.
but the Lord really, during that time, began to really soften my heart, because as a really young boy, like age 4 or 5, I remember hearing the gospel in a Sunday school class. And it always stuck with me. I never doubted that there was a God, but I was just like, you go your way, I'll go mine. If I call you, if I need you, I'll call you.
Right.
And I thought, well, living your own life, doing what you want to, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
And yet it just kept getting me, into lower holes in my life. And
Right.
but I got to the point where in high school, I met a guy in my PE class, and he was a guy who seemed to have something I didn't. And he was athletic, he was musical, he was funny. And he started inviting me over to his house to play guitar and shoot hoops and stuff, and we became friends. And then he started inviting me to his church. And of course, I'm a long-haired, drug-dealing hippie. I was like, you really don't want me to go to your church, give all the older folks heart attacks or something. But he kept hounding me, and really through his friendship, used that friendship as a way to help me get there. So I eventually went with him just to kind of get him off my back, to be honest. And but at the close of the service, he asked me a question that no one had ever asked me before. Because being who I was and had the reputation that I was, playing in the band, I was still, I was playing basketball, excelling in that, traveling with an all-star team. So everybody knew who I was, but they were afraid of me because of my, I had this sarcastic, response. I'd make my teachers cry, and I was just a horrible person, basically, But these, Christians would come and witness to me at school, and they would run away crying, just from things I would say to them. But Greg asked me this question at the close of that service at age 16. He just said, Jeff, if you were to die tonight, do you know where you'd spend eternity? And unbeknownst to him, he didn't know that I had just a phobia about death and the afterlife. I mean, I knew where I was going. I knew I would not go to heaven. And so that night, the Holy Spirit just convicted my heart. There was a complete surrender of my will to Christ. I believed on Jesus. I asked Him to save me. And I did all that without even really praying a prayer. It was just believing, and just surrendering. And just standing right there on that 3rd row from the front, I gave my life to Christ. And my life just instantly changed. That night, He gave me His personal Bible and just said, it's yours now. And He began to disciple me. And, interesting, I had never read anything deeper than a comic book by age 16. I just kind of, talked my way through classes and stuff. And, but that night, I had this insatiable hunger to read. And so I started reading the Bible. And I read the Gospel of John that night. I came back the next night. I said, well, what are, he said, read the other Gospels. I did that. Then I read the New Testament, the Old Testament. And then he just started giving me books. So I read like J.I. Packer and A.W. Tozier and R.A. Torrey and all these greats, as a 16-year-old who had never really read anything. So I was just growing exponentially during that time. And so that kind of got me put on the path to my Christian walk. I was the first Christian in my family, so I didn't really know, how to relate to anybody. I just knew I got to go tell my family about Christ.
Right,
So
right.
that's how I got started with Christ.
That's great. And how did that lead into prophecy
Yeah.
and kind of what you've been doing now?
Well, speaking of books, so there was a guy in our church who owned a Christian bookstore, and he would hire high school kids to come in and do like inventory for him, and just work in the store. And of course, I'm just getting gospel tracts and stuff, and so I stumbled on Hal Lindsey's book, A Late Great Planet Earth, and read that and just thought, wow, you mean God has planned the future? It's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I just started devouring, books like that, and that kind of got me initially introduced to the world of prophecy. And then when I was, then I went to college, which I never thought I'd go to college. My college pastor taught through the book of Revelation. And I'll never forget, at that point I'd felt called into the ministry, just a really strong desire to help others experience what I experienced, but to do it as a profession. And I remember I was going to Sunday school class, and at this particular Sunday school, we had 700 college students come in on Sunday mornings because they had never heard the Bible taught like this. And I'd already been accepted at another seminary, and yet I said to my girlfriend, who's now my wife, I said, I don't know where he went to seminary, but wherever he went, I'm going there because I want to teach the Bible like he does. And it turned out to be Dallas Theological Seminary. So just through reading books and whetting my appetite through hearing great teachers who taught on Bible prophecy, that kind of began my desire in that world.
That's great. We're so glad you could join us. If you would like to explore more of our resources on end-time prophecy, including our newest programs with Jeff Kinley, just click on the link nearby.